Good afternoon, and welcome to a special webinar today, bringing vets into the HIT workforce, a complimentary webinar from healthsystemcio.com, sponsored by Greencastle. Little housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra. I'm the editor-in-chief of healthsystemcio.com, and I'll be your moderator. Regarding questions, we certainly encourage you asking questions. You can send them in at any time. Type them into the Q&A box, the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Leave the default set to all panelists. We'll be reviewing those and posing them later in the program, but go ahead and send them in at any time. You see the URL to download the deck right there in front of you. There's a shortened URL in the bottom of all slides, and I will also send the URL out in the chat box, so you should have plenty of opportunities to get it. We will have an archive available of today's event that should be ready within 2 business days. And you can feel free, actually, if you're registered for today's event, you will receive an email when it's ready. So just to see how we're going to spend our time today, first we're going to hear from Jaime Parent, Associate CIO at Rush University Medical Center. Then we'll be hearing from our sponsor, represented by Selwyn Evans, Senior Partner with Greencastle Associates Consulting. And then we'll do our Q&A with Jaime. So without further delay, I'm going to turn this, as I said, special event over to Jaime Parent. Jaime?
Thank you very much, Anthony. First of all, I'd like to thank Health Systems CIO, Anthony and Kate, for putting this all together, as well as Selwyn from Greencastle. It's great that they provided this platform for what I think is not only an entertaining topic for a webinar, but also one that is very meaningful and hopefully is a message that can be reproduced at other medical facilities across the country. So today's agenda, first of all, we'll talk about just what is exactly the problem here. What is the problem we are trying to solve? What are some of the things facing military veterans and their family as they transition back to the civilian workforce? We'll look a little bit about the employment landscape, especially here in Chicagoland. What is the healthcare opportunities? What are the IT opportunities for military veterans to take advantage of and use their skills that they've achieved through their military service? We'll get into the Enabled Vet Internship program, a little bit about how the program works, some of the partnerships we've been able to create, and some of the successes that we've had to date. I'll tell you a little bit about guiding principles, about how we kind of structure this program, the way we kind of help everybody that's involved with it, whether they're a veteran, a vendor, a hospital. We've developed a lot of good principles on making the program successful. We'll talk about the enabled vet process, what happens when a vet comes to Rush, how is the program structured, etc. And then finally, probably the most important slide is the ways for you to join the movement, ways that you can get involved and you can essentially reproduce the same thing that we're doing here for your hospitals and your communities. So on the next slide, what is the problem? Well, being a transitionary military vet a few years back, oftentimes it's a different environment that the veteran returns from either active duty overseas or active duty in country. For those that have deployed overseas, many military vets come back different people. They are fundamentally different than the ways and means of what they did in the States versus when they went overseas. And quite honestly, a lot of them have so much trouble transitioning back that they can't really handle it, and they sign up yet for another tour of duty in Afghanistan or Iraq. They've developed bonds and relationships and responsibilities that they feel are very important. And so you get multiple deployments from military veterans that are having difficulties. As far as benefits and programs, it's a very confusing landscape for the military veteran, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan, 9/11, or even the Vietnam War. A veteran is not a veteran is not a veteran. And the VA has a number of different programs and opportunities that are specific to the years that you served. And in addition, there's a lot of support groups out there that provide oftentimes a confusing choice for veterans in terms of getting the help they need and getting the assistance, whether it's medical, social, or employment. Third bullet is that the support agencies are really not prepared, whether it's any of those things I mentioned, social or employment or medical, because if you recall, this was supposed to be in short engagement. This was supposed to be kind of a response to 9/11, and it was probably geared more for something that we're going to do in a short term versus long term. I don't think anybody in the beginning knew exactly how long this thing would last. And in fact, it's still going on today. And finally, some veterans have problems with self-IDing. They feel there's a stigma. They feel there's bias. We can go into arguments whether or not that is true, but the fact of the matter, it is real for the veterans, and sometimes they have difficulty asking for help and asking for the right groups of people to give them the help that they need. So if you look at the employment landscape, if you add up all the jobs that major manufacturing and other companies, Fortune 5 companies, are offering, the Boeings, the Walmarts, the Coca-Colas, it tallies up to about 1.2 million jobs, but there's 200,000 vets that are transitioning today. So the question is, why does unemployment hover at 9 to 10%? Well, the problem is that veterans are unfamiliar and inexperienced with their resume and their job interview process. We see a lot of military resumes, and quite honestly, they look like electronic brochures. And they're filled with military jargon like SG, USAF, PACAF, MedCom, etc. And hiring managers don't even know what these are, but they're deeply embedded in the military member. And so the military member doesn't really know how to bring out, in some cases, doesn't know how to bring out the true value of military service and portray that in the job interview process. And the main reason is because they've never had to really go through it. In the military, you get orders to go somewhere, and you go. There's no resume. There's no job interview. You just go. In addition to that, there are some training programs available through grants and entitlements, but the lack of operational experience and the ability to articulate military experience to these job managers is a barrier to success. The military will present a resume with all these great things that they've done, and the job hirer will say, well, that's great, thank you for your service, but what kind of problem are you going to solve for me? And the military vet will come back with, well, I can do anything. I managed a battalion. I had 400, 500 troops underneath me. But that's all good, but that doesn't solve the problem that the organization that's trying to hire the military veteran has. And so they get more in a retrospect versus prospect as to what they can do to solve the problem of the individual that's hiring them. And then finally, we've gone through just one of the toughest recessions in recent memory. There's high unemployment, a lot of competition out there, and getting jobs is tough, as many of you know. So we came up with this idea for the Enabled Vet Internship, and here's kind of the philosophy behind it. We knew that healthcare IT careers are something that is going to be needed in the future. And currently, lots of healthcare careers are hot. IT is very hot. And you put them together, and I won't say you have a recession-proof approach, but you certainly have one that is continually to be active and will be active for the unforeseeable future. So the kind of the goal is not to necessarily get the veteran a job like the Fortune 500 companies are offering, and that's a very noble effort by those groups. But we want to give them a career, and we want to segue them into an environmental culture that needs their training, needs the experience, the loyalty, the dedication, the project management. These things don't get articulated in the interview, and what we need to do is put the whole package together of certifications, training, military background, and make that individual as marketable as possible. So the way we do this is we've established lots of partnerships. We've gone with some of the major vendors in the technology field, and we've been able to do some on-the-job training to get the military veterans involved in learning things online. And that doesn't necessarily have to be with major corporations. There's a lot of freeware opportunities for veterans. They just don't know about them. And so we want to bring kind of like a classroom, electronic classroom perspective to the military veteran. One of the things that was easy for us and a good program for military vets to transition to was a PC to VDI 3-year project. Now, back in the day, leasing PCs for 3 years was a pretty good idea. But now with the explosion of tablets and laptops and mobile phones, you could argue that the PC is on the way out, but it's certainly close to being in the ICU or on the critical list. So what we're doing, instead of leasing a PC every month to our customers, we're instead giving them a VDI client, which saves us about $600 a device. The device lasts longer than a PC because there's not too much that can break at the end user end. And it's a good segue for the military person to come in, learn some various technologies that are associated with this type of rollout, get customer service and actually talk to nurses and doctors, etc., and really show themselves not only as technologists but also ones that can integrate into a workforce and do a darn good job at customer services as well. So to achieve that end, we've developed many relationships at the federal, city, state, major IT vendors, and also community colleges in the Chicago area. A lot of this is still in the grassroots stage, but we've had enough to at least start our program and make it successful for graduates to move on and get jobs. And to that end, of our inaugural class of 5 veterans, 4 of them have found employment. 2 of them found jobs early, as a matter of fact. And so we've got some lessons learned as to when we should do resume development and job interviews, because we're finding that, at least for these 2 vets, they didn't even go through the entire program, which is really okay with me because I want them to get hired. The focus of this program is for them to get a job. The focus is not staff augmentation. It's not just basic learning or information that they could use later on. I'm pleased as punched when they get hired early, and it's because we've done our job. It's not about completing the program. It's finding a job. And so one guy found a job in the financial loop, and another guy found a job working in a data center. So some of our guiding principles is this program is really all about the veteran. It's not a staff augmentation exercise. We don't really want to hire veterans, and it's certainly not a charity event nor a productivity exercise. I don't care if one vet can do 20 units a day and the other one can only do 3. That's not our goal. Our goal is to make them employable using a whole person concept. So we're not looking to hire people to really help our staff, although they do help our staff. That's not the focus on the program. We also don't provide a job. Our focus is on providing an opportunity. We don't promise any jobs, but we do promise potential. And working with our vendor partners, not only technology, but also consulting and job interviewing skills, we offer potential. And I think everyone on the call can agree that the potential in healthcare IT right now is virtually limitless. We concentrate on the veterans and their families in need that might not be offered by other means. So, for example, Rush is a solid, caring healthcare environment. And I could go on and on about what a rich institution is, Rush is, the collaborative spirit that we have here, and just the incredible energy we have toward collaboration and success. So a healthcare setting like Rush is a perfect environment for veterans to come into because we will work with the veterans individually to make them successful. As I said before, we offer on-the-job training, shadowing, and coaching. So, for example, you will come in as a veteran and you will learn the VDI process. In addition to that, you will get a certification after you are finished with the VDI process. And so at the very least, if the veteran, for whatever reason, decides to fall off the face of the earth, we've given them a skill. We've given them a skill that is marketable. I had one veteran just tell me a couple weeks ago, he said, Jaime, my resume is good, but when I added the VDI stuff on monster.com, I got 9 phone calls and I have 4 interviews scheduled. So he wasn't adding the right things that would make him employable. But after the internship, the experience he had with VDI and PCs, he was able to find a job afterwards. So for our enabled veteran process, we use a number of local facilities and programs that are available to us. We use VA job boards. We use the VA rehabilitation units that we have. We have 2 in town here, commercial vendors, colleges send people to us, radio programs, and even word of mouth. So we use a number of different resources to bring veterans in our program. As I stated before, we do the orientation and initial training. We sign them up online, and we work on achieving a certification in VDI deployment. After they've achieved that certification, we move to the career choice and shadowing part. So we say to the veteran, okay, so what is it you want to do with the rest of your life? You've gotten exposure now to a PC VDI rollout. What are your interests? And here at Rush, we have just about everything you could think of. Databases, web development, infrastructure, servers, telephone operators, help desks, data center, a number of things that are marketable for the veteran to choose from. And we don't want to impose a choice on the veteran, because I think a lot of us that got into this business got into it because we perhaps made our hobby kind of like our life skills. So my background, just so that you know, I am a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force Medical Service. I got into the business as a lab guy. And so what my wife likes to tell me, and I have to admit is true, I've gone from being a lab geek to a technology geek. And I've been able to make a career out of both. And so the philosophy with this is, if you have passion for something, whether it's IT or playing the piano, you'll get good at it if you work hard at it, if you have the resources available, whether it's training or learning on your own. And that's the approach we take. We want them to follow something that they enjoy, something that they feel that they could make a contribution, and we don't want to just pigeonhole them into something that perhaps doesn't maximize their skills. Again, then we follow up with resume development and mock job interviews. What we do is we have several consulting firms that help with this, and they help rebuild the resume for the military veterans. And then once that resume is the best it can be, we do some mock job interviews. And lots of times it's just skills that perhaps you and I have forgotten. Show up early. If you're a male, white shirt, red power tie. If you're a female, smart business suit. Show up early. Don't look at your cell phone. Have your shoes shined. Give good eye contact. Keep your hands on the table, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of job interviewers look for nonverbal cues. Oftentimes they look for nonverbal cues even more than what your qualifications are. So we go through the resume development, the mock job interviews, and then we take the same consultants that we had, and we give the veterans to the consultants. So one of the consultants says, well, gee, Jamie, if I get so-and-so hired, I get a finder's fee. And I'm like, well, that's great. I hope you get $1 million in finder's fees. Because if you get $1 million in finder's fees, you're getting a lot of veterans into the employment workforce. So that kind of message and philosophy is kind of inherent to the enabled vet process. This is an all-end kind of thing. Anybody that even comes to me and we talk about veterans, they get to be on what I call my propaganda list, whether it's on LinkedIn or email or phone calls. Everybody can be part of this process because everybody is touched by a military veteran who is in transition. It's either a son, a daughter, a father, next-door neighbor, someone who worked with. Everybody is touched by the military veteran experience. And so I'll move now to the last slide, which I call the ways to join the movement. And there are several ways that you can participate. You can spread the word about the program. This program, Enabled Vet, is a labor of love. We're not selling anything. We're not licensing anything. We do have curriculum in place, and we want to share it with anybody that has the interest, the passion to help military members transition to a successful career. So I would like you to consider implementing some type of Enabled Vet internship at your healthcare institution. It doesn't take a lot of money. We give the veterans a small stipend. What it does take, though, is a lot of care, and it does take partnering with other institutions in your community to make it work. But for us as a hospital, For us as a good steward in the city of Chicago, it's really a no-brainer for that because we give a lot of money philanthropically, free care, etc., community programs anyway. This makes for a nice enhancement for a population that is really in need of services. You can email me at enabled_vet@rush.edu, and you can find more about the program at enabledvet.org. And again, the final bullet here is minimal cost, maximum effort, and proven results. And I will leave you with one final thought. We don't try to compete with the VA. We know we can't. VA, very large organization, lots of resources, and the VA really does a lot to help the military veteran. We try to fill in some gaps. So, for example, we do the on-the-job training that might not be available through other sources. And in addition, we also recognize that there are some military veterans that come back with a severe impairment. Some come back with PTSD, and some come back with, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, and some come back with traumatic brain injury, which is TBI. And the chief psychiatrist here said, well, Jaime, we can send you people, but some of these men and women with TBI are really tough. You could show them how a PC works one day, and then the next day they forget everything. So I said, yeah, you're right, but we have a center here, the Rush Home program for seeing military members and their families. I said, maybe if the GI can't work, what if we train the spouse? What if we train little Johnny who's flipping burgers down the street but is a whiz with a smartphone, have him sit with our application developers, and maybe little Johnny is now developing medical apps on an iPhone. Do you think that's not a hot skill that could be employable? So we, again, to kind of wrap up, the Enabled Vet program helps military veterans and anybody else who indirectly could help the military veteran be a temporary breadwinner or be a long-term breadwinner, because what we found is the military family is very cohesive. They work and act and feel as a unit, and our program hits all of that on all cylinders. So at this time, Anthony, I'll turn it back to you for the next part of our program.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much, Jaime. Excellent presentation. Now we're going to hear from our sponsor, who's made the event possible, represented by Selwyn Evans, who's our senior partner at Greencastle Associates. Selwyn?
Thank you, Anthony. And Jaime, thanks for the presentation and championing such a program. But more importantly, thank you for giving back. Supporting veterans is a topic that at Greencastle we're very passionate about. One of the reasons why we're passionate about the topic is that Greencastle is a 100% veteran-owned organization. And actually, it was myself and two other folks got together. Actually, we were in an Army Special Operations unit. And working in the civilian world, one day we were talking and said, hey, we need to leverage what we learned in the military, and in working special operations, you're working on things that are at high risk, and there's a lot of ambiguity, and failure is not an option. And oh, by the way, they spent a lot of money training us and developing these tools for planning and execution. We're like, hey, let's leverage that. So we started Greencastle, and Greencastle is a firm that focuses on implementations. In healthcare, it's the implementation of health data analytics or clinical transformation technologies or optimizing technology. And we've been doing that since 1997. And what Greencastle is we're a program project management firm that implements. And when I say implementation, I'm talking about that our consultants really focus on process improvement as part of that implementation, obviously the project management. But, really the important part of the implementation is the organizational change management, and that is getting doctors and nurses and staff to adopt that new technology or that new change in process. What's unique about Greencastle? Well, first of all, the vast majority of folks who work for Greencastle are veterans. They're former military officers from all branches of the service, and yes, Jaime, we even have a couple from the Air Force. But, our approach, and if you go to our website and you see any of our materials, we talk about this maximize the value of change. And what that is that, I'll give you the example. If you took the time to schedule to change your own oil, and you lifted up the hood, well, geez, while you're in there changing the oil, why don't you do some other things, like check other fluids, or tighten a couple bolts, because it really doesn't take that much additional time. So it's like, look, you're going after this for a staff efficiency. Well, what else can we get? We have the hood open, and we have the tools out. So let's maximize the value of the time that we're there. And the last thing I want to say that's different about Greencastle is we have what we call our methodology is based on 5 rights of implementation in healthcare. It's the same as the medical med administration, and our 5 rights are around having the right focus with the right team, right energy, focus on the right workflow, and then have the right impact. Last slide, I'll leave you with this. It's pretty awesome. Syracuse University in 2012 published a white paper. You can see it there. It's a business case for hiring a veteran. It's an awesome paper. You can go to our website and download that. And also on our website, we have a page that says, "Why do veterans make good Greencastle consultants?" So again, Anthony, thank you for bringing this topic together today as a webinar. And again, Jaime, thank you for giving back. And with that, I'll turn it back to Anthony.
Very good. Well, thank you, Selwyn. This has been a very enjoyable event, and we have some time now for a Q&A. So I want to remind everybody to go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A box, the lower right-hand corner. Leave the default set to all panelists, and we will get those questions to Jaime. So first off, we had a question. Somebody said they were retired from the Navy, and they have experience transitioning vets, this type of thing. The goal is to gain some insight into the unique issues in healthcare IT. I mean, obviously, a site like Health System CIO and other publications out there. But Jaime, your thoughts on getting some basic familiarity with what's going on in healthcare IT for some of these folks?
Well, the military veteran already has a number of skills that are valuable, that can be easily transitioned to the civilian workforce. There's just some barriers and some stones that need to be climbed over in order for that connection to take hold. The veteran already comes to the table with things like character, sense of service, wanting to give back, timeliness, loyalty, project management. There's a number of skills that, quite honestly, are difficult to find sometimes in the civilian population. You may be interviewing millennials at your organizations. They are a different type of social culture, if you will. I know, I've got 3 of them, and it's just a different kind of approach that they bring to the job. And sometimes the military veteran, with their experience and their maturity, are a really good fit for your organization. They just need those types of skills necessary to land them the job. We picked healthcare IT because of the environment and because that healthcare IT is a very hot field. But we also want to start moving forward with other things, like there is no reason why security officers couldn't be transitioned. A lot of military police in the military. Dietary, even nurses and physicians. There's a number of transitional skills beyond IT that could be used as part of a program. And so that's kind of like our overall goal. We started with healthcare IT because of the need, but certainly military veterans and the character they bring can be a true advantage for any healthcare organization or any organization that wants to hire them.
Okay, next question. What certifications or credentials can a vet get while on active duty that will help them get into healthcare IT? Any thoughts on that, Jaime?
Well, if you're in healthcare IT and you're setting up cable and wires, or you're in security, those kind of things are essential, really, for a lot of healthcare IT careers. The certifications are good. The A+ is a good one, is one of the good ones. Some of the major vendors also have good certification programs. But I've met military veterans who've gone through those programs, and they still don't get hired because the program doesn't address either the whole person concept of the resume and the mock job interview, or they don't have any experience. So when they leave the Enabled Vet program, they have all of those components that perhaps were not available after they graduated and got the certification. We see a lot of resumes come across the desk that have a lot of very impressive alphabet soup after them. When you apply a operational question, they're completely lost, because anybody that has learned something in school gets out and finds how it really works in the real world, right? Whether it's IT or anything else. So we fill those gaps, and that's, I think, is the key to making the certification obtained, the on-the-job training, the mock job interviews and resume development. We have a polished man or woman now going out into the marketplace that can articulate and identify their skills, and in a way that the civilian workforce can not only understand but also appreciate.
Very good. Next question. After the initial VDI training, are any of the shadowing or informational opportunities location dependent? For example, if an airman is transitioning out of Scott Air Force Base but cannot travel to Chicago on a regular basis, what would you recommend they do?
What we're trying to do is transplant this program to other facilities, and we're really on the cusp of doing that. The Enabled Vet program can work in really any hospital in any community. Now, Scott Air Force Base is not Chicago, I will admit that, but certainly there's a hospital there, and certainly there's probably military veterans in that community. When, I don't say if, but when we can transplant that program into another community, like Scott Air Force Base, for example, I think it could be just as effective, even though Chicago's the third biggest city in the country. This program can really work anywhere else. We're an academic medical center, but it could also work at a community hospital, because healthcare IT market is hot all across the United States.
Very good. I am a vet who has 20 years of medical experience and have obtained the A+ and Network Plus certifications in an effort to facilitate a career change to HIT. I'm also preparing to take the HIT certification exam. Are there any HIT internship programs in Indianapolis? That's obviously very specific. So you can either take a crack at that or then talk about the broader issue of internship programs in other cities.
There's not a whole lot of internship programs out there that provide the on-the-job training experience. There's a number of organizations that do have either working through grants or other types of fiscal vehicles training for military veterans. But again, that on-the-job experience is a lot of what people are looking for. So if you're in Indianapolis, I would say if there are any opportunities, I would see if there are any opportunities in your community, but don't look past the ability to maybe volunteer your services so that you're actually in a work center, no matter where it is. Could be a school, could be a hospital. Get that on-the-job experience. That will help you also in build your profile, not only from what you learn and what you can deploy at that particular place, but it also helps you gain valuable operational experience working with others. And it's kind of like what Woody Allen says, right? 70% of success is showing up. And if you're showing up there and you've got good skills, I believe you will find something. Something will come in your way, and that will be an avenue for you to get a job in the civilian sector.
Jaime, we have a number of messages from someone who is interested in collaborating with you or your organization in the New York City area. If you want to talk about people who want to reach out and collaborate with you, what would you suggest, either getting in touch with you or your thoughts about I guess, engaging with folks that want to sort of take this and run with it?
You can send me an email at the email address for Enabled Veteran that was in the slide deck. You can go to our website and enable-vet.org, or send me an email at enablevet@rush.edu. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm willing to participate with anybody that wants to that wants to participate, no matter where you are geographically, because this is a good idea everywhere, and this is an idea that could work anywhere. And it's something that is not really that difficult to do, and I think we could perhaps leverage some of the United States leading companies in IT who are doing this arrangement with us. They could probably do the same thing in your area as well. Just contact the particular rep in that area, and you're probably good to go with the online training. And then, once you have that in place, you can use any of our documentation or anything I can provide personally in order to get a program similar to ours up and running in your local hospital and community.
Very good. Excellent. Next question. Has Rush converted or bridged any healthcare IT military training to acceptable college credit towards certification or degree?
Rush doesn't do that, but colleges and universities do. And it's specific for each state. So you would have to go to your individual resources from your state to see if any certifications you have gotten in military are portable to the civilian sector. Part of the reason that it's becoming more and more transferable is not so much with healthcare IT, but it is for EMT people. If you think about what an EMT person has done in the military, it's quite graphic, quite intense, and easily transferable to the civilian sector. But the problem has been is that their certifications, although recognized, were not enough to give them a state license. I'm happy to say that the state of Illinois has broken down that barrier, but I'm not quite sure what other states are in the process of doing in order to give military credit for important certifications that are easily transferable, like EMT, to the civilian community.
Very good. Next question. The workforce development experts that work with vets often seem to discourage vets from getting into healthcare IT because they can't find it in o.net. Any advice on where to find good facts and figures on the real job market in healthcare IT? Not off the top of my head, but if you go and Google healthcare IT careers /.military or put some Google search together, I'm sure you'll find some. The VA is always a good resource for those types of things. I'm not quite sure why someone from the VA would discourage a career in healthcare IT, but then again, the individual offices may vary, and I can't speak to what kind of advice they're getting from different resources. But I'm here to tell you that if you do get some certification and on-the-job training, just like my vet who put his resume out there on Monster.com, you will get inquiries and you will achieve results. And Jaime, when we had talked originally about this, you had mentioned some of the folks that are still suffering from their time in combat and major adjustments and transitioning back. What would your thoughts be to folks that are concerned or wary about taking on more than they can handle, bringing folks into their workforce that are going to be difficult to manage? Well, that's a really good question, because there is some of that concern out there. There is some bias, prejudice, whatever you want to call it, and some of that is brought out by newscasts about veterans who have done something in the news. That's where I would retreat back to say, well, number one, we're a hospital. So if you're having a bad day, let's go over to the psychiatry clinic, or we'll take you to the VA across the street, or you can go home and come back when you're ready. But we have a team here. We have a team of people that want to get the veteran integrated into a job, and if there are some behavioral issues or some other types of things going on, as a medical center, we have the appropriate infrastructure to be able to support that. Now, in other communities, you might not have that large of an infrastructure,
but you probably have a VA medical center in close proximity to where you're at. Not always, but the VAs are pervasive throughout the United States, and there's probably one close by. As you partner with that VA, you can get materials from them as to issues facing military veterans and their families, and perhaps you could start a dialogue as to how you want to employ military veterans. We've done that with the 2 veterans hospitals in the Chicagoland area. They have veterans rehabilitation units, and they help find veterans a job, whether it's at the local grocery store or perhaps even the medical center. So partner with the VA, and they will help you understand the vet and also provide resources for the veteran to get that will enable them not only from a healthcare standard, but also from an employment standard.
Yeah, and we talked about the skill set that they do bring to the table, and certainly the level of responsibility that folks who have been through the military and especially seen service, active service, the level of things they've had to deal with can be just on a completely different scale than someone who's come out of college with a degree in liberal arts, myself included. So, it's you can get a lot, is my point, right?
Mm-hmm. You're right, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we don't usually bring our sponsor back in, but Selwyn, I do want to, because of your experience and time in the military, I do want to ask you if you had any further thoughts before we wound up our event today. And again, appreciate your sponsorship so much.
No, I'm fine. It's like we hire veterans all the time, and it's working with the individual. They come to the workforce with tremendous experience. I mean, Jaime talked about project management. I mean, to learn how to organize folks and to understand what are the deliverables and what are the tasks. That's classic project management, and Greencastle as an organization have figured out how to leverage that. And it's a model that works for us. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Jaime, that's about all the questions I had. Before I wind up, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, before we sign off, let me add this little tidbit. You go into these things thinking that you're helping military veterans and their families, thinking that you're really helping out with a tremendous need that they have. And in fact, you are. But very quickly, there's another side of the coin. When you hire military veterans in your environment, yes, you're doing a good thing for them, but they help change the game of your environment. What they bring to an environment is something that perhaps will break down barriers or biases that they've had before. I encourage the veterans here to tell their story, to tell what they've been through, whatever level of comfortability that they are. Just tell the story, because they start changing the habits and mindset of the people that already work there in the workforce. They realize what the veteran has gone through, and although it's easy to think about someone who has gone over to Afghanistan or Iraq, it really changes your culture when you find out the nuts and bolts of this thing. And you go into this thinking you're doing something nice for the military veteran, but they are coming back and providing an understanding and awareness and a bridge as to what really happened, what they did, and maybe standing 10 minutes in the coffee line this morning wasn't really that bad. I asked one military veteran what he liked most about coming to work and working at Rush. And he said, it's great to walk to work and not have to worry about getting shot at. Yep. Kind of puts it in perspective.
Definitely. All right, Jaime, thanks so much. We're going to wind up now. As I mentioned, you'll receive an email when our archive is ready, and a separate registration is required. Anybody who's got the Chime CIO certification is entitled to 1 credit. So either if you've asked us to, we will, and if you haven't, go ahead and contact Chime. I want to thank our sponsor, Greencastle, and just let everyone know that $1,000 of today's proceedings have been donated to the Enabled Veteran Program. Questions, comments, feel free to email me. We're always looking to improve our webinars, and you can go to our website to see our upcoming program and our upcoming schedule in the last 12 months of archived events. So with that, I want to again thank Jaime and Selwyn, and everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.